Hi everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel Design and Code Lab. So do you know today my bot actually wanted to post 10 images within a second on Twitter. But somehow only 3 images were posted and the remaining images weren't. So this thing intrigued me, like why might this has happened? So I looked over the internet, gone through some books, and somehow I found out that there's a concept of something called rate limiter which denied my requests of 10 images to be posted on Twitter. So I just wanted to know more about this. How does the rate limiter works in a real life scenario? And thus, welcome to this YouTube series on designing of a rate limiter. So in this series of videos, we will see how a rate limiter is implemented in a system architecture in a real life scenario. So without wasting any time, let's deep dive into today's video, which is about introduction of rate limiter. Hi everyone. So welcome to this introductory lecture of this series, Design a Rate Limiter. So what is a rate limiter? So as the name suggests, a rate limiter is used to limit or control the rate of traffic sent to a client or a service. So before diving into this design or more into the nitty-gritty of how a rate limiter actually works in a ideal scenario, let's first ask this question: why do we need a rate limiter? Simply we can say we need to limit the rate of requests or rate of API calls. But why do we actually need to limit? Suppose consider a scenario where you are sending a legitimate request to an API server and suddenly some malicious messages or malicious attack happens to your server and thousands of malicious messages or requests are being sent to the particular server along with your valid request to the server. So now the server resources are blocked, and whenever a valid request has been sent to the server, since the server requests are blocked, that is their CPU or memory are being used by those malicious requests, thereby the server drops those requests, and this creates a situation of starvation. So this is called, or rather we use rate limiter to prevent starvation caused by sending of malicious requests to the API server, which we call as denial of service attack. So this is one use case where rate limiter can be used. Another is, suppose your service is actually using a third party application for, let's say, credit check. Let's say suppose our application is a e-commerce website and we are checking credit check of a particular customer, like whether he is eligible or not and all those other related stuffs, and we are also using a third party payment gateway service to process the payment requests. And suppose since we are using a third party, these are cost incurred. That means for each call to the third party, a cost is incurred. Thus we can't randomly make a large amount of requests to the third party application. So in order for our service to be cost effective, so in order to reduce the cost and to reduce the amount of API calls made to the third party, in that case we can use what we call a rate limiter. So before sending any request, it goes through the rate limiter. It has a threshold. If it exceeds that threshold, that request is dropped. So these two are the main reason why can we use a rate limiter in our actual service. So before designing or before diving into the logic by which we can implement a rate limiter, we will now see how to approach this rate limiter. So rate limiter is a vast thing, so it can be implemented in a multiple number of ways. So let's look into how can we approach or how can we approach the problem of designing a rate limiter whenever we encounter this type of question in case of a system design round interview. So before diving deep into designing of rate limiter, we should understand the design and establish some design scope. So let's say step 1, we understand the problem and design the scope. So what does it mean is we need to ensure what should be our rate limiter or how should we build our rate limiter by asking the interviewer some certain questions. Maybe we can ask, is it implemented on client side or server side? This is one of the things which we could ask. Let's say we are hoping that the interviewer answers like you can implement on the server side, and this is also a good practice to implement on the server side. Second question which you could do is the rate limiter throttles what? Like what does it drop? Is it IP addresses? Is it user IDs? Or is it some other? So depending on the application or the company's requirement, we can fix what we are going to throttle, be it IP address, be it user IDs or any others. Third, what we could do is, are we building it for some company or a startup? Fourth is like, does it work in a distributed environment? In most of the cases, the answer should be yes. And the final thing which we could ask is, if any request throttled, do we inform the user? So by this 5 queries asking the interviewer regarding your designing of rate limiter, we can list down certain requirements which we will refer while building the rate limiter. So from this what we could actually incur is, let's say we say requirements. What are the requirements which we want is, so first the basic requirement of a rate limiter is limit access request. Second thing is limit the memory usage. Third, what we could do is it should be distributed. Means shared across multiple servers. There should be an well established exception handling. What does it mean is the user should be notified properly if there is any request being throttled. User is notified properly. And lastly, which every system should follow, high fault tolerance. So like because of the rate limiter, or suppose rate limiter is not working or the cache server goes offline, your entire system should not be affected. Entire system should be up even if the rate limiter is down. So these are the requirements which we can enlist from the above questions which we have asked the interviewer. So by this we now have an idea how we are going to design our rate limiter. So if we just give a glimpse of what we have done or what we just have gone through in this video is like, first we define what is a rate limiter. So from the name it's very obvious that rate limiter is used to limit or control the number of rate of traffic requests sent to the client or a service. Moreover, why do we need a rate limiter? That is the main question. So prevent starvation caused by DOS attack, denial of services attack, means some malicious requests are being sent and this blocks the CPU or the memory and thereby causing starvation for the valid requests to be handled. And second thing is, for company perspective to be cost effective, we should limit the credit check, payment gateway or other API calls to the third party application, and thereby using a rate limiter we could achieve that. So these are the two main things for which we design a rate limiter. There are also other use cases for that. So before designing, step one, what we should do is we should understand the problem and design the scope. Like we should enlist what are the requirements which we need to build our or design our rate limiter. So for that we could ask a couple of questions to the interviewer, like whether it should be implemented on the client side or on the server side. If it is so, what does the rate limiter actually throttles? Is it the user IDs or is it the IP addresses or is it something else? Are we building it for a company or a startup so that we can handle a large number of requests depending on the answer of the interviewer? Fourth is like, does it work in a distributed system? In most of the cases it should work in a distributed system. And for the final question, what we could do is, do we handle the throttle properly? Like, do we return the information to the user whenever a particular request has been throttled? So after this queries, when we have our particular answers, we can jot down the requirements, which are like the basic functionality of rate limiter is to limit access request. Second is limit the memory usage. It should be distributed across multiple servers, exception handling, properly handling of throttled requests to the users, and finally it should be highly fault tolerance, like even if the rate limiter is down, our entire system should not go down. So now we have a proper idea how we are going to design a rate limiter. So in the next video we will look into the algorithms or the logic by which a rate limiter is being built. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next video.